And David back up for questions. Again, if you have a question, just maybe you could say the name, the name of your company, maybe the name of your app. Any questions? Okay, I guess I got to run. Did you have one? Yeah, you can ask a question.
Sorry. Vince Triplingo. Interesting thing you guys are talking about as far as the last thing you just said about soft launching, things like that. It seems to go against the MVP model. Are you saying it doesn't work with tablet devices? Or not doesn't work, but you're recommending doesn't flow as smooth for tablet and like iPad, things like that, as it would for like web? Or, I mean, can you elaborate more on what you just said?
Sure. I mean, I would say that, first of all, you're sort of limited by Apple to how many beta users you could even have. But, it's really hard to get to the top of the App Store, and you really want that. You want that like critical mass of users to start using your product. I mean, we learned so much from our users once they downloaded Zeit, but we needed those hundreds of thousands of users to start giving us feedback. So I really believe that, the era of the soft launch, at least for the tablet market as it exists right now, is over. I would say I've heard other developers actually launching on Android first, not because they expect it to be the big market, but to do a test there and then figure out how to launch on the iPad. And I think that's an interesting methodology too.
Wow. Yeah, sorry to the Google people in the audience. Phil, does this match your experience? Go big or go home, or for a product with a continuing user base, is this as important to have a huge, huge opening?
Yeah, it hasn't really been important for us. I think it depends really on what the product is. So we do soft launches all the time. We get pretty high in the App Store rankings. We get pretty high in the App Store rankings on a continual basis. But what we've really found is much more important to just sort of stay up there permanently. You could be number 1 or number 2 for a couple of days. You'll get 100,000 downloads or whatever. In our business, it's much more important that we are a permanent fixture in the top 50 or whatever for years. That gets us much more exposure. So we don't take the same approach, but I'm sure it works well for somebody and not for others. The one thing I would say about that is promotion by Apple or by Google or by Amazon or whoever on the platform is a big part of getting up there, and they will often promote something when it's good. They won't necessarily promote the first version. So it's actually not a bad idea to get a first version out, get it really good, and then coordinate a submission of a next major version, hoping that you'd get some promotion that way. We've had a lot of success doing that.
More questions from the audience? And while they're running the mic over, maybe I could ask about pricing. Everybody's app is free here, I think.
Yep.
But you actually charge for the books?
Yeah.
In-app purchases, I guess?
Absolutely.
And what have you learned about pricing and getting people to buy the digital version? Can you charge more for it, the same for it? Do you charge less for it?
So right now, the student is trained to go look for the cheapest price. So its price is still important. Ebook is typically half the price of a physical book. But what we're seeing is that students who are now, once they start use the app, they're telling other people that they may be comfortable with 10-15% more than what it is today for enhanced books, not just a flat book. So.
What about, let's take the question from the audience. Good.
My question is for the guys from Zeit and Editions. On Editions, it seemed the content that AOL didn't make was linked to an external site, but compared to Zeit, it seems like you stay in the app wherever you go. It's not, you don't, if it's on TechCrunch, you don't go to TechCrunch.com. Did you get any backlash from publishers that feel like a little slighted that you didn't link to TechCrunch? Do they feel like they're losing revenue on ads, or how do you feel about keeping everything in the app?
Yeah, so I mean, the goal was to really make an awesome user experience, and the reality is right now most web pages are not optimized for the tablet. So we're working with publishers to figure out how to deliver a great user experience, deliver revenue to publishers, and allow people to find this great content on Zeit. About a few weeks after we launched, we got a letter from a few publishers who were concerned about the way that we were putting their content on Zeit. Those publishers now are actually in web mode, so there are some publishers that are in web mode, but most publishers have chosen to stay in reading mode because they realize that they're getting an audience that they probably wouldn't have otherwise had. People share stuff a lot on site, which they really like, and that we're working together to figure out how to build revenue.
And when they share, it gets shared to their site, not your landing page with their content on it, obviously.
That's exactly correct. So it links back to the publisher.
What is the amount of words you'll take? You take whatever's in the RSS feed, or do you cap it at 300 words, 200 words? Do you have some best practice?
For the article, for the article pages, we take as much content as there. The goal is to show the user the entire article.
Right. And what about images? That's a complicated issue too in both editions, I think. And with AOL, you have access to all of AOL's vast image licensing deals, I'm assuming, so you get some protection there. But
to a degree, so the image licensing deals that AOL has are not kind of blanket agreements, and this app basically treats all of the sites that we're looking at as peers. We're basically pulling in AOL content by screen scraping, just like we do with everyone else, for better or for worse. Right. But we're in a kind of a different mode from if we were a standalone company or a startup, what we might have done with these things was different. By the way, we do present all of the content in the app. You never actually leave the app, but we show an embedded browser that shows the publisher's page. But it's just kind of a, where do you draw the lines here? And the policy we put in place was, the default, I believe, is 100 words, small image. If they publish more in their RSS feed than that 100 words, that's how we cap it. And if it's our own content, obviously we don't put a limit on it. But we are a publisher, and we have to be cognizant of that and respectful of that.
But truthfully, the RSS feed was not meant for syndication to other publishers. The RSS feed was made for users, for their reader.
I would argue that this is a reader for a user.
But you have advertising in it.
Not inside the third-party content.
And that is the other compromise, is to have the advertising be interstitials, not attached to their content.
Yeah, the ads run in their articles when you pull up a page. It's their own page. And so far, by the way, we've gotten only positive reactions from publishers, but this is obviously an evolving thing.
Yeah. And what CPMs do you get for that big, beautiful, full-page interstitial? That looks like a $50 CPM to me.
Substantially larger than that.
Larger than $50?
Yes, sir.
Wow. And what is the time
That's a very innovative and unique ad, right?
Sure.
It took a lot of money to produce it. It's new technology. The curve's going to go down, right? But we are aiming for a premium ad experience within this app.
What's the engagement on? You have those as well, I think, on Zeit. Do you have ads yet?
No, we don't have any ads yet.
What's the engagement like on ads like that, in terms of seconds?
We don't know
minutes?
yet. The ads this is 2 days old.
Oh, okay. More questions from the audience? Anyone? One right here.
Hi, Nolan from Zappos. Phil, I had a question for you about sizing. I know you deal with tablets, and you're always on top of when a new tablet comes out, getting the right user experience for that. Have you ever been caught off guard with a new tablet coming out in a form factor or sizing that you didn't have something, and how did you have your app deal with a form factor that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Particularly, more often on Android, because there's just more of those that come out without a whole lot of advanced warning. With Apple and manufacturers that only have kind of one device, at a time, it's much easier to just stay on top of that. Usually, the sizing is usually one of the first things that gets announced. But we've definitely been surprised by Android from time to time, it sucks. It's a substandard user experience when that happens, and we have to kind of rush to try to adjust it and try to fix it. We do have some deals with some carriers. So, for example, we have a deal with Docomo in Japan. And part of that deal is we get to test our software on all of their devices before it ships. So we try to make as pixel-perfect version as possible on Android, which usually you just can't do because you don't get them until they come out. But I think Google is very well aware of that, and it seems like a ton of effort that they're putting in right now is to address that exact problem. So I'm hoping that problem becomes less severe, not more as time goes on.
We can guess which platforms are the most popular.
For us?
Yeah, but which ones have the most usage per user? Which ones do you see people use the iPhone for more than the Android, or the tablet? Is the tablet like 10x the usage, or
no,
what does your internal metrics say?
So the stats are really interesting. So about 70%, or actually a little bit more now, maybe 75% of all of our new users find us on a mobile app store. So in terms of new user acquisition, the mobile app stores are vastly important, and 98% of those are Apple and Google, iOS and Android, of which Apple is still a little bit ahead, but they're getting close. They're almost neck and neck at this point. But that's new users. Most people find us from a mobile device, but then within the first month, they also start using us on desktop. So when you actually look at usage every day, it's about 50% mobile and 50% desktop. We have native versions for Mac and for Windows and web versions. In terms of the split on the mobile side between tablets and phones, it's probably 2/3 phones, 1/3 tablets. But when we look at profitability of users, tablet users are slightly more profitable for us in terms of conversion rates, and usage rates. And so it's definitely, the tablets are a huge and worthwhile market for us. If I had to choose between only doing phones and only doing tablets, I'd probably stick with phones right now, but luckily you don't have to make that choice.
And what about subscriptions through the App Store? I mean, right now your app is free. You have to subscribe at the site and be a member there. Are you going to offer subscriptions through the App Store?
We do both. We've done both for a while, so we have both in-app subscriptions and site subscriptions.
Oh, you do have it in-app, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And is that how people buy it typically?
Most people buy through the website, although the percentage of in-app is going up. And we're happy either way. We have the price. We try to make the price the same, in both situations. We want to reduce the friction to getting users to buy. So if the easiest way to do it is to do it in-app through the iPad, that's fantastic. If it's easier for someone to do it through a website, because again, remember, by the time someone converts to Evernote Premium, they've probably been using Evernote for several months. Our conversion rates go up dramatically. It's very few in the first month, and after 6 months, a year, 2 years, it's much, much higher. So by that point, you're probably using it not just on your mobile device, but also on your PC, and it might be easier for you to go do it from your desktop experience, not your phone experience. But the conversion rates, the subscription rates work really well. They're slightly higher for Apple users than non-Apple users, but that probably just tracks directly with demographics.
Osman, you probably saw Christoph's demonstration, Haptic Current. Any thoughts on making hearts beat inside of the app and that kind of a thing?
Yeah, so where we are more interested in getting into these apps where if you have a beating heart, how do you really get inside of it, right? So it's more about touch and going into it. You can bring sounds and things like that maybe in music. For example, inside a music book, this would definitely make a lot of sense. But this would really need to be part of an iOS for us to go and interact with it. And by the way, on engagement, what we're seeing is some incredible numbers on the tablet form factor compared to a browser. Is on average, a student is using our app for 3 hours per day, and flipping 29 pages, doing 35 highlights. So we are seeing that students will sit and use a tablet for studying and interacting with it. As compared to a browser, we don't see them staying as long in the book, because I think it's just a different, keyword.
People are, the feedback I've gotten from Apple is that usage of the product affects rank.
Right.
So
Definitely.
is that one of the, definitely does. So the usage of your two products, and actually and even the magazine products, has got to be long. Is that part of the reason why you think that you guys all across the board rank so well? Is that people are opening it up on a daily basis, maybe spending 2-3 hours with it, or 5 or 10 minutes with it?
So for us, so we took the MVP route, where we put something soft out in June, and we were playing with some customers to see how they react with it. And then during back to school, so we get 2 holiday seasons, so to speak, August and January, when our apps, our usage spikes up significantly. But what we saw was we were able to stay on top for 2 straight weeks, pretty much during back to school, because of the number of downloads that were happening. So we saw downloads being a lot more than usage in terms of keeping your app up. And the consistency of downloads occurring is what really, obviously keeps it up there. I haven't tracked it myself, so I'm not sure how much usage, what percentage is it really to drive it up, so I'm not sure.
So obviously the other big trend in technology right now is social. In fact, we're going to have a one-day social event like this in November. We'll have 25 cool social companies launch. I didn't see much social, I mean, aside from just tweet this page, which really isn't social. It's broadcasting. You don't get too much credit for that. In the magazine products, and you don't see it in actually No as well. Mm-hmm. So what are your guys' thoughts on social? Is that a big part of the roadmap for the next year, is to make these apps more social, or do people on their iPads not care about being social, they just care about consuming?
So the way we see it, most people try to do a little small thing and say my app is now social. We don't see it like that. It has to be inherently from the app itself, from the usability. And the approach we're taking right now is that the textbook is the first thing to transition. You've got to get that right. And then, if nothing else existed in the world, I have my textbook app and I have to study, is that the best experience? The way we are thinking about social is, all right, now that I've got that down, what is the next thing I have to do? I have to maybe interact with my classmates, my professor. So we are taking the route of social, not just being, I want to get to everyone right now, because students really, it's like they're there for a grade. Maybe they want to ask questions. And in education, social is going to be a lot different than one-to-many. It's going to be one to a group of people I really care about around me. So we are taking that route, but we want to make sure that the core product, which they're using for 3 hours a day, is so rock solid that they want to embrace the next thing that we roll out. So we are taking a slower approach.
Will Zeit be social in some way? Do people want to talk about the long magazine article they read in the New Yorker or something?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Is that, like, you've got to get the product right and then integrate social very carefully and get the interface right. I mean, I think about my own usage and how I get articles from my mother and friends. I mean, people email articles to each other. Well, wouldn't that be cool if you had a really easy way to share that within your Zeit, right? Like my Zeit shows an alert that says my mother sent me this really cool article. But to do that, you've got to do it right. I mean, people know how to use email. They know how to use Read It Later. They know how to use Twitter. And I think that one of the challenges a lot of applications have when they go overly social is that they make the bar too high and then no one uses it.
Can I add something on the social side? When you think about the user experience with the iPad, I'm really sad to see that there is no more tangible haptic feedback. One of the reasons is the emotion that is being attached when you interact with the device and get vibrations, get textures, get the feel of what you interact with. Imagine a notebook. You flip through pages, you feel the pages. You get an image, you feel the texture of the person on it. And the sense of social networking today is very limited to what you can read, limited to what you hear, and what you can see. And having a platform like the Android platforms today, even if it's not a tablet, just on the smartphone side, gives you a chance to see how people really welcome it. And it's so emotional that it's very hard to quantify. But once people start playing with it, I mean, today we have over 300 million phones with haptics in it on the Android market, on the Android and, well, I should say non-iOS place, which talks about how much people are valuing it. Yeah. So from a social networking standpoint, there is really room for
Clearly, the poke feature needs haptics.
We've got a great haptic app on the iPad too, called Evernote Peek. We kind of cheat for the haptics. We actually make you open and close the physical smart cover as a way to control the app. And yeah, it's great. It actually.
How does that work exactly? You open it up and.
Yeah, it's kind of a flashcard system. You use it to study things for a test or something. And so you peek. You lift up the little edge of the cover and it shows you a clue. And then you lift it further and it shows you the answer. Yeah. And then you close it.
And nobody really uses that, but it gets you featured in the App Store. I mean, is that basically the purpose? It's like it's a great PR thing and a hook?
It started out just because it was cool. We got the iPad 2s and the smart covers, and we kept.
Yeah, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean that in an awesome sense. Like
it was a lot of fun. And,
I mean, I read 10 stories about that.
Yeah, but the usage is actually really high.
Really?
And I think what people are finding is totally what you're saying with haptic is it reinforces the learning. It's actually like significantly more intuitive to get that feel of actually physically lifting something up and closing it. Like that makes an extra connection in your brain when you do that. So
yeah, how come No doesn't have that for the flashcards and stuff like that? Why don't you steal that idea? Like I said, we're all here to steal ideas.
He's been doing it for 20 years. Yeah, I mean,
these are some great people for us to steal ideas from. Let's thank them for sharing all these amazing ideas, inspiring us. We're totally running like 20 minutes behind, so we're just going to take a quick 10-minute break. And there's some seats available on the far side. So let's just take a 10-minute break, and we're going to start right up. The next group is really good. So be back in here at 11.